want to thank you for being with us, D.C. Advocacy Coordinator for Amazon Watch. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. U.S. citizens returning home from foreign travel can be searched by Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents just like anyone else. But our next guest is an independent journalist who estimates he's been subjected to lengthy searches at least 7 times in the last 5 years. Brandon Jourdan most recently worked as a videographer for Democracy Now! Covering the G20 protests in Canada. This past weekend, Brandon was returning to New York from Haiti when ICE subjected him to a 5-hour search and copied the contents of his laptop along with his external hard drive and phone. Brandon Jourdan joins me here in New York. We're also joined by Crump, staff attorney with the American Civil Liberties Union, specializing in free speech and privacy issues. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Brandon, talk about what happened to you when you flew into JFK Airport from Port-au-Prince.
When I flew into New York from Haiti, after I'd worked for 2 weeks covering rebuilding projects on schools in Haiti, I first heard on the intercom that they wanted everyone to have their passports out. I pulled my passport out. When I walked out onto the Skyway, 2 Immigrations and Customs Enforcement officers took me by the arm and led me to a Homeland Security room.
Wait, so are you saying that they told everyone to have their passports out because actually they were looking for you?
They were looking for me.
Well, how do you know once you left that they didn't go through everyone else's passports on the plane?
They left with me. They didn't continue. They didn't continue looking at passports.
And what did they do? Where did they take you?
They took me to, I guess, a Homeland Security office within the JFK Airport. At that point, they began looking through all of my clothes, everything. I strategically put a copy of the First and Fourth Amendment in my bags because this has happened before, and also on my computer and my smartphone and on my hard drives. They took my journal, all my business cards, all that. They said they were going to photocopy them all.
Did they explain why they were doing this?
I asked them, why are you doing this? They basically said, you're on a list, we don't know why. And
you're on a list?
Yeah, and these are orders from Washington. And they copied my hard drive, they copied my laptop, they copied every single one of my compact flash cards that I use for my camera, which is absurd to me because I was documenting people building schools in the country devastated by an earthquake.
And then they gave everything back after many hours? And
I think, if I'm correct, around 6:30 I left the airport. I mean, around 6:30 I left the plane, and it was 10:30, 11 o'clock before I left, which is about medium for what I have to go through.
Crump, you're with the ACLU. What rights does a passenger have coming into the airport?
The ACLU believes that people have a First and Fourth Amendment right not to have the materials they bring with them, specifically their expressive materials, their laptops, their cell phones, their papers, searched unless the government has reasonable suspicion that they've engaged in wrongdoing. Unfortunately, the Obama administration, like the Bush administration, has taken the view that it can search people's electronic devices at the border for any reason or no reason at all. So they think they don't have to have any suspicion that the laptop contains evidence of a crime before they search it.
The Obama administration.
The Obama administration believes that, and we filed a lawsuit challenging that policy because we think that the Constitution says otherwise.
Brandon Jourdan, this isn't the first time.
No.
What happened before this?
Okay, well, for instance, on November 7th, 2010, I just got back from seeing my girlfriend, now my fiance, who is a professor at the University of Leiden. Before I got on the plane.
And this was in the plane where?
This was in Amsterdam.
Amsterdam Schiphol Airport.
Before I even got on the plane, ICE approached me and questioned me.
American authorities.
American
ICE.
authorities in Amsterdam Schiphol Airport, ICE, questioned me. They asked what I've been doing. I said I went and saw my girlfriend, Marianne Mackelberg. She's a professor, which I thought was really weird. I mean, why do they care? And then they asked me, you sure you didn't go anywhere else in Europe? And if I had have went somewhere else in Europe, that's nothing criminal about that. And then I got back. I got back to the United States. I was pulled off the plane. This time they announced my name over the intercom. They said everyone have their passports out. William Jourdan, William's my first name. report to the cabin crew. I reported to them. Once again, everything was photocopied. My computer, everything was copied. I was held for, I think, approximately about 6 hours. I was tired. I was jet lagged. I just wanted to go home. I hadn't done anything wrong. My work as a journalist is protected, or should be protected.
And what did they say to you then, why they were doing this?
Honestly, they didn't really respond at all. They were more forthcoming with information this time than they had in the past. All they've usually said in the past is like, you're on a list, or we don't know, or...
When did this all start?
Well, I worked in 2008 in the Gaza Strip. I was commissioned by a nonprofit called the Council for National Interest, which is a bunch of former State Department people, whatnot, who basically collect information on what's happening in the Middle East. Now, during that time, we interviewed a lot of people. For instance, the Egyptian Foreign Ministry, the former Egyptian Foreign Minister, the U.S. embassies, and we went to the Gaza Strip and we interviewed people from the UN, and we also interviewed Ismail Haniyeh, the leader of Hamas. A controversial figure, but the work I was doing was documenting something, and something that I feel serves the public good.
So after Gaza, what happened?
After Gaza, the first time, I don't think they pulled me from the plane. The first time I just went through, when I was going through the regular customs thing, they pulled me aside, and then they questioned me. They photocopied all my journal. They photocopied all my business cards. They were really interested in anything that was in Arabic, that's when it began. And then the same summer, I flew back to New York. I finished up some work in Washington and as well, and then I flew to Japan, where I was invited to speak at the G8 protests that were happening. Not at the protests, but at some universities while it was going on. I did a lot of work on the movement against corporate globalization. And when I came back, that was when they really started pulling me from the plane. And that was when I realized that the way I travel was forever altered, that I'm on a list, and this is the way, this is a routine now, this is protocol for how they handle me.
When you came back from Haiti, you had a camera?
Oh, yeah.
They took the camera?
They took my camera. They took anything that had media that they could copy, they copied it. And when I worked
They know how to work the camera?
They took the flash card. They didn't really need the camera. Now, when I came back when I worked for Democracy Now! And at the G20 protests, they asked me how to use my camera. They took my tapes.
And then they said?
They said, you know, how do we turn this on?
You know,
Catherine Crump.
This is a distressingly common scenario. One of the plaintiffs in our ongoing lawsuit is the National Press Photographers Association. Their members have been searched previously, just like you've been searched. And of course, journalists have a special interest in not having their expressive materials searched. Many people speak to confidential sources and often become very concerned that their sources overseas aren't going to be able to trust them anymore if they know that talking to a journalist means that when you cross the border, the U.S. government may access the journalist's notes or pictures and so forth. So it's a real problem.
I mean, a journalist then becomes an agent of the state because they are just gathering information that is then collected by the state when they return.
That's right. And the problem even goes beyond journalists. It certainly affects journalists, but lawyers who are defending people have the same problem. Many people who have defended Guantanamo detainees have had to go overseas to gather evidence, and the idea that they would be gathering evidence to defend someone who's being prosecuted by the U.S. government and then by crossing the border turned all of that over to the U.S. government, it's something that really threatens a lawyer's ability to do their job, just like it threatens journalists' ability to do their jobs. But, you know, even people who aren't part of the professions often have very sensitive information on their computers. When you think about it, people have their financial records, their family photographs, their personal diaries, and the idea that we as Americans should have to show all of that stuff to the government just because we travel internationally is really contrary to our basic values.
Brandon, did you have journals?
I mean, after this situation started, I quit writing down certain details. If I have to, I find another way to get it home. I'm also very cognitive of the fact that I can jeopardize the subjects that I'm trying to record. Mm-hmm. And so and maybe I have to go through this all the time. I mean, I just had to do a deposition for some footage that I shot at the inauguration in 2005. And I willingly did that because it was actually for activists, and I didn't mind going forward because it helped their case. But
how does this make you feel when you go through this?
it makes me paranoid. It makes me angry. And
will you sue?
Of course. As soon as I find the lawyer to do it, I will sue everyone until I can be removed from this list, until I can get justice. And I'm not an individualist. I'm doing this because out of principle. Because if I'm getting searched, I guarantee you there are a whole bunch of people that have a similar experience.
Catherine Crump, who are you representing in your suit?
We represent 2 organizations and an individual. We represent the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, the National Press Photographers Association, and a man named Pascal Abador. He is a U.S. citizen who's studying in Canada, and when he was coming across the border on the train, a border agent stopped him, asked what he studied. He said he studied Islamic studies, and asked where he'd been, and he'd been to Jordan and Lebanon, and on that basis hauled him to the cafe car, opened up his laptop, and proceeded to require him to turn over his passport and password to his laptop, and then search the contents. I don't believe that the mere fact that someone chooses to study Islamic studies means that the government has a good reason to go through their laptop.
Catherine, do passengers have any rights to privacy under the Obama administration?
Unfortunately, the Obama administration has taken a very anti-privacy view here. The policy is extremely broad. It's not just that the government can search the contents of your laptop.
We have just 10 seconds.
They can copy it. They can even detain it for, they say, as long as they need to make sure that you're not carrying anything criminal. And we think they need reasonable suspicion in order to do so. I want to thank you both very much for being with us. Catherine Crump, staff attorney with the ACLU, and Brandon Jourdan, an independent journalist who has been searched repeatedly by federal authorities when he comes into airports here in the United States and even outside. That does it for the show. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.